Hello everybody and welcome to the People's Poll, the show each and every Monday where James and I discuss a topic as chosen by you, the FPL community. My name is Serge.
My name is James.
And this is Planet FPL, one of our many shows that we produce each and every week. Last week was a little bit odd because there's no football at the weekend, wasn't it? So international break nonsense. This week is the lead up to the Premier League, which is back at the weekend. We do have the England game tonight, Bulgaria v England. If you're one of the 59,000 people that listens in between us releasing this audio and 8 p.m. this Monday evening, do tune in because we're going to be live streaming, James and I, watching the game, having a bit of banter whilst the game's on in the background. If Friday is anything to go by, switch off the commentary because it'll be dull. We'll have a few things to say.
Plenty. I'll be inviting some questions this afternoon. We talk about some English FPL assets and probably a wider conversation that I'd like to have about, does England matter?
True. As a nation, it does. I think we're talking about the football here.
Yeah.
It's like, shall we just
divvy
it up and give it away to half
clearly
to Wales,
by the
half
way
to Scotland?
we vote for things, nobody actually gives a fuck about the country, do
they? No. We put a poll out, which was a straight shootout between 4 A or B options, and we may even discuss the ones that didn't win later on this evening if we have a bit of time. There was a close second place, but why don't you give us the options and the poll results and we can talk about the winner.
I put options out for 4 head-to-head battles, if you like, because in terms of who would be the best FPL asset, and of course you've selected the one which I believe is the most difficult to call. So I put 4 options out at different valuations. Kane against Aubameyang, which won 18% of the vote. Vardy against Firmino, which won 21% of the vote. Jimenez against Pukki won 27% of the vote. And with over 33% of the vote, of over 1,000 votes actually, was Abraham against Wilson. So we're going to be talking about US presidents right now.
Yes. Abraham as in Lincoln.
Yeah.
That was his first name.
Yeah,
Wilson as in Woodrow, which was his surname. So we're kind of sort of fudging it a little bit.
Who was the better president?
I have no idea.
No, I wouldn't have a clue either, mate.
I'd probably go Lincoln because he's the more famous, but I wouldn't have a clue. I can tell you one thing. Both are better than the dickhead that they got in the office right now.
Yeah, that's definitely another podcast. We'll vote for that sometime as well.
Yeah, man. It's one of my guilty pleasures, American politics. So I'm happy to have a bit of Twitter banter with anyone about that, American politics. But let's talk about Tammy Abraham and Callum Wilson. Now, we could get into the XGs and the XAs and all the rest of that kind of stuff. I had this direct choice 2 weeks ago when I was on Wildcard. I went with Callum Wilson because of the fixtures, and also he was more expensive, which then gave me a route out to get to Tammy Abraham if I wasn't happy after a couple of weeks. And Tammy's since shot up a little bit in price. Callum's had a price rise as well. Tammy's gone up by 0.2 since I had to make that choice. Callum Wilson only by 0.1. So we're now at 7.9 versus 7.8, if I'm correct, or 7.7.
I believe Abraham's 7.7.
7.7.
Wilson's
So
7.9.
There's still 0.2 between them. But as some will hear, we recorded a joint podcast with the WGTA guys that will be coming out soon. Don't want to be a spoiler alert, but I'm armbanding Callum Wilson, as Tom has already alluded to on Twitter. So I feel like now that my decision is made, I don't like to look back and then reanalyze the decision that I've made because I might convince myself that I made the wrong decision. So I haven't really paid much attention to this because I've already made my bed and now I'm going to lie in it and put the armband on it as well.
So I don't own Callum Wilson, but I do own Tammy Abraham.
Yes.
Just to add some context here. So I don't know if I'm representing Abraham and Suj is representing Wilson.
I'm not. I think Abraham is as solid a pick at the moment.
There isn't, and this is the case more often than not anyway, there isn't one that's necessarily better than the other. I've drilled into the numbers for a change. And other than the fact, obviously, Abraham's outscoring Wilson at the moment, but Wilson has 3 assists. There's not a huge amount in them. Suj is right in terms of what he says about the immediate fixtures for Bournemouth. I think longer term, it looks a lot better for Abraham.
Chelsea have fantastic fixtures until Christmas. Other than 3, which are all away. They have 2 London derbies, Arsenal and Tottenham, and they have City away between now and Christmas. But other than that, they have very, very good fixtures.
Yeah, Chelsea's a longer term thing. Just to break down kind of an overall of this, looking at a number of different metrics, which, thank you, Will Thomas, I've nicked from Fantasy Football Hub.
Credit.
That's credit.
FF Hub.
Yeah, we
at FF Hub _ Will or whatever.
One of them.
Yep.
We give out credit where it's due.
Mm-hmm.
The only metrics where really Wilson beats Abraham is on the amount of big chances that he's had so far this season and the amount of key passes that Wilson makes. Interestingly, Wilson is on the ball a lot more than Abraham, interestingly. But there's not a lot in it at all, statistically wise. If you look at Will has a tool which works out expected FPL points so far this season. Abraham, 46.54. Wilson, 46.45. That's their expected FPL points so far this season. A tenth of an FPL point, in theory, on what they've done so far this season, should be the difference. Abraham's obviously scored 3 more than Wilson, but Wilson has the 3 assists.
Well, the thing is, if you look at it, Abraham has been explosive because he's had the hat-trick and braces, whereas Callum Wilson has been consistently ones or goals and a goal and assist, or just kind of ticking away for the few game weeks. Having said that, Chelsea did take a little bit of time to warm up. I mean, new squad, new team, and then they've been banging ever since. So you've got the consistency versus the explosiveness, maybe. Would you argue that that is a fair way to look at it? Tammy Abraham has the potential to be more explosive?
I would say...
Apart from this weekend,
I would say probably yes, but you can't question Wilson's consistency over a sustained period now. So, I mean, he was averaging 5.6 points per game last year, Callum Wilson. He's averaging 6 so far this season. So he's not digressing, right?
No.
And it seems remarkable, mainly because of what happened with Pukki and Abraham to an extent. Obviously, he is currently a lower price than what he started with, Callum Wilson.
Yeah, he's mad. I owned him in game week 1 at 8 million, sold him in game week 2, after game week 2 to get Pukki in, because I had to jump on the Pukki party. He'd since dropped to 7.8, and on wildcard I paid 7.8 for him, and now I'm happy that I've got him back. But I do have a little bit of envy with Tammy Abraham owners.
Because
he's a great FPL asset and will be at a fantastic price until Christmas. There's every argument for both, and a lot of people do have both. A lot of people do have both. I've stuck with one premium though in Aubameyang, and my formation is 3-5-2. So unless I go to 3-4-3 and downgrade a midfielder, then I'm not going to be getting Tammy Abraham. And one of the midfielders I'd have to downgrade would be one of the premium ones to give me enough money. So it'd be Maddison, Heung-min Son, or Kevin De Bruyne, and that's not really going to happen. Not to get Tammy Abraham in at the moment when I have Mason Mount.
It feels like this value of between 8 and 7 million for forwards is really hot. And I feel like from now until the end of the season, the majority of us are going to have someone in this value.
If not 2 or 3. There's plenty with Haller, Abraham and Wilson.
Absolutely viable to have 3. Because you've got Wilson at 7.9, Abraham at 7.7, obviously Pukki and Jimenez at 7.1. And a lot of the feedback is, people want to know if either of them are better choices than Wilson or Abraham. And you've also got Haller in there at 7.4.
Correct.
And the fixtures are still okay on Haller.
They are. I think he just doesn't have the explosiveness of some of the others so far.
But then it's big jump up to say sort of Rashford at 8.4, which will probably keep decreasing. And then you're going down to 6.76s to Giroud, Batshuayi, Keane, Ashley Barnes.
None of those are really interesting at all.
In that between 7 and 8 million, and Wilson and Abraham particularly could begin to exceed that 8 million, I think. You have to remember as well, what's important to say about this debate is the ownership factor, in that Wilson has basically approx 12% ownership and Abraham has 41% ownership now, which is absolutely huge for a forward. So now I'm pretty sure that's more than Pukki now. Must be, yeah. So Abraham 41.7% ownership, Pukki 40% ownership. Aguero and Aubameyang have 29-27% ownership respectively. Whereas the other guys, Wilson 12, Jimenez is still massive differential, 8.7% ownership, and Aller is 5% owned.
How scared are you about not owning Callum Wilson?
I'm not.
Okay. Whereas I
probably the
am
point.
scared about not owning Tammy Abraham.
And that's because of the ownership factor.
Yes, yeah, for sure. But I made the decision to go with Wilson for a reason. And I have to keep reminding myself it's for the consistency. And he still is their main man as the pivot in a front three. So I'm still backing Callum Wilson. With this fixture coming up against Norwich at home with the armband, if he doesn't return, there's going to be the real red mist descending. And especially because the opportunity to then move to Abraham is there so clearly. So I may be looking at Callum Wilson to Tammy Abraham.
What with Watford away after Norwich?
Well...
And then Man United at home.
Yeah,
I
get that.
Away.
I get that. I'm also trying to look now in my squad to find about £2 million to move from Heung-min Son to Mane in about 3 to 4 weeks. And even that little 0.2 or 0.1 everywhere across the park is going to help.
I think where the relevance comes for me and my personal team is obviously I'm still on Harry Kane. You've got Aubameyang, right?
Aubameyang, yeah.
So my intention is to sell Kane probably after this weekend when we play Watford. I'll still captain Harry this week as long as he comes through the England game unscathed tonight. But I think afterwards, I could come down to Wilson, you know. That's part of the point of this argument. I think the conclusion is that Abraham is probably just about the better choice because I think it's a longer term option. Because of a longer term run of fixtures, like Chelsea's okay up to kind of early January. There's City away in there, and I think there's fixtures against Spurs and Arsenal as well. But it's all right, and there's a really long run of good home fixtures, and that's important. What you have to ask yourself with these two players as well, if I come off Kane and I go to Wilson, which would leave me with 3 players in this value, Abraham, Wilson, Pukki, I think Vardy's a strong consideration for me as well, by the way.
Instead of Pukki or instead of Wilson?
I'd Kane to Vardy, for example. I think.
But Pukki to Wilson is still an option all of a sudden as well.
Absolutely. So I'm still going to be in and around that value. And one of the reasons I think Abraham really wins out here is I think longer term, if he can sustain what he's doing at the moment, which is a goal a game, it's actually more than a goal a game because he started 7, which he won't. He's not going to finish on 41 league goals or whatever. But if he can sustain something around what Wilson's consistency has been in a better football team, Abraham is a captaincy option for a lot of these upcoming Chelsea games.
That was something I was going to move on to as a topic of conversation. I'm more confident putting the armband on Abraham than I am Wilson. So we're kind of talking through, Abraham's got the potential to be more explosive, potentially. He's cheaper. He's got better fixtures over the next 15 game weeks. And he's a safer captaincy option. And he's playing in a better side in Chelsea, who I think the addition of, or the return of N'Golo Kante when he's fit again, touch wood very soon, will give them that stable platform to build on top of as well. The creative players around him, I mean, Hudson-Odoi coming back can only be good for Tammy Abraham. Are we just actually thinking, you know what, there's a lot to be said for Tammy Abraham, whereas Callum Wilson is the safe option and potentially the template pick?
Wilson will Abraham's the template pick,
oh,
isn't
true.
It? It's not Wilson.
Okay, so the safe option.
I love, and you'll hear this when we release the podcast tomorrow about what you and Tom at Who Got the Assist are going to be doing with Wilson. And I know you're going to go for it. And he's absolutely Norwich at home. You know, don't look beyond it. Sometimes I think a real mistake, and it's probably a mistake I've made myself personally, and it's another reason why I'm thinking maybe even I've maintained throughout, I'd want to be at least Vardy's level so I can get back to these guys. And I think that's probably what I'll end up doing. But I think there is a fear around generally captaining players at this sort of value, like Abraham Wilson, Whereas I think if they were like 9 or 10 million, particularly in Abraham's case, in an odd converse kind of way, you'd be more inclined to do it. You feel like, oh, I've invested that money in him. I need to be captain in regularly. Whereas because he's at 7.7, it's overlooked. These home fixtures between now and including game week 22 for Abraham, Newcastle, Palace, West Ham, Villa, Bournemouth, Southampton, Burnley. There are away fixtures in there as well that are decent, including Burnley, Watford and Brighton. He's going to get captained in some of these games. And that makes me feel more like I can move the funds. Essentially, what I may well be... If I end up coming down to, say, Wilson to go with Abraham and Pukki, that's at the point where I'm going to start knocking off probably Joel Matip and get Mane in.
Mm-hmm. The thing with Tammy Abraham is he started the season at 7 million.
I'm not sure, actually. Has he jumped that much?
He's had a 0.7 rise, hasn't he? He hasn't had a 0.2 rise, has he? So I'm pretty sure it'll be 7.
Yeah.
If he scores 20 goals this season and he's Chelsea's front man, he's coming in next season at least 9.5.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're about getting that player this season. That next year when you look at it at 9.5,
it's a wider conversation on Chelsea to say these guys, Abraham, Mount, Tomori, Hudson-Odoi, the prices that they are now in FPL, and we kind of predicted this pre-season when we didn't know the answers. Now we do.
You're never going to get them again.
You ain't going to get these guys at these prices again. So in terms of the value they offer on the wider on Chelsea, we kind of talked about this last week about treble ups on Chelsea, Leicester, but particularly Chelsea, because other than maybe like Syunku at Leicester, Maddison might have a bit of a rise. They're not going to jump like these Chelsea guys are. Like if Abraham goes and scores 25 plus goals, forget the price you're saying, it'll be in excess of 10 million next year. I
think 10. You never see them jump by more than maybe 2 or 3 million. So I think 10 will probably be the max that Abraham would
if he goes mental, like he'll have to have that sort of jump money.
True. Chelsea can put their hand in their pocket because they're not allowed to right now.
If he does score 25 plus goals and he comes in at only 9 million next year, you're buying him again,
straight away. Yeah.
So I think for him, whereas
that's like at the Vardy level.
Whereas if you compare that, Wilson's value feels right. And the reason it feels right is because the frustration of people coming off in spite of this amazing consistency. If I'd have said to everybody pre-season who owned him, I was one, that he would score average 6 points per game for the first 8 game weeks, absolutely would never have sold him. Even in spite of all that movement for Pukki, etc., he would have stayed in there. And yet for some reason, I feel, comparing the two, I think it's lent into the fact I know there's games where I'm going to captain Abraham. Yeah. If I didn't own Kane, I'd captain Abraham this weekend.
Yeah. Quite a few people have been talking about doing it. Even Ted, Rotation FPL, who we have on this week.
We do on Thursday, yeah.
So you'll get even more of it.
More Chelsea.
It's definitely going to be a topic of conversation.
We'll have to talk about Newcastle a lot.
Yeah, true. The thing is that Norwich at home for Callum Wilson is 100%. Like I'm not making the move this week, not a chance. Mainly because I shook hands with Tom on this one. But yeah, Watford away, then Man United at home. I mean, they're not the best defensively. Newcastle away, Wolves at home. Then after that, Tottenham away, Palace away, Liverpool at home, Chelsea away.
It starts stiffening up for Wilson.
I would happily move from Wilson to Abraham then, but the price I might be screwed over on the value then. All of a sudden, I need to find some money. I've already shot myself in the foot with Kevin De Bruyne, not being able to afford to buy him back as it stands for Riyad Mahrez this week, unless somehow miraculously there's a price drop.
It's not happening.
No, it's not happening, is it? So,
no.
So I don't want to.
Unless it's confirmed out.
I don't want to shoot myself in the foot again with this one and be priced out. So I have to be very careful on the value here, where I might have to make the move from Wilson to Tammy Abraham a little earlier than I would like. But there's no fixtures coming up for Chelsea that I don't like other than the City game, which is game week 13.
Yeah, I think you just put up with it. And obviously the case with the way City are defending at the moment, it's not like you can't go and score there. I think what really puts me off Wilson, now's the right week to go on. I think like Tom's plan, get him in, captain him against the worst defensive side. I think Wilson is probably, maybe other than Kane, and that's a personal opinion, the best captaincy option this weekend. I think it's the right choice. If you're comparing Wilson and Abraham to captain this weekend, my advice would be go Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's got a bigger power, and I think Newcastle are a far better side defensively and can frustrate in fixtures like this. Don't forget, the Leicester game, they weren't in it, but they had a player sent off at 1-0, right?
Yeah.
There's no knowing if it would have gone that way or not. What really puts me off Wilson is that run between game weeks 13 and 17.
Tottenham and Liverpool and what have you.
Wolves at home, Tottenham away, Palace away. Wolves and Palace are two. You look on them in the FDRs and they show us twos. They're really not for attacking players against them. Wolves and Palace are about as awkward as you can get outside the top 6, 7.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's Liverpool at home, Chelsea away. And after that, another one that's awkward, Burnley at home. And then they play Arsenal at home.
Yeah, that
run really
stretch,
puts me off.
I'd happily have Tammy Abraham. The only thing is Tammy Abraham in game week 13, when that's when Bournemouth have Wolves, right? I think 13.
That's right, yeah.
After that, it makes sense to go to Tammy Abraham because they've got City that week. In the meantime, I could miss 5 or 6 Tammy Abraham goals. So really, really, really tricky, this one. But I think overall, for people looking at what to do, and there's a bunch of people on wildcard this week, the majority will be taking Tammy Abraham ahead of Callum Wilson. And that's probably, well, not probably, it is the right decision from what we're saying. But if you have Callum Wilson, there's no reason to jump off until maybe between game week 12 and 13 or just after game week 13.
So is there any regret for you on the fact that you've gone Wilson rather than Abraham?
No. Not for the next 4 game weeks.
If
There's a little bit of nervousness and fear about putting the armband on him this weekend. A little bit. Because it is a little bit of a differential. Big players? I have Mahrez, Heung-min Son. Son was my original captaincy choice and who I'd planned to captain.
I think it's risky.
What, Son?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm going at Wilson. And then I just look at... The thing that reminds me that actually, yeah, it's okay to armband Wilson is just thinking about Norwich. And apologies to Mark FPL Badger for that. But just looking at Norwich, thinking, you know what, forget about it, because they... unfortunately just have more injuries. They picked up more in the international break, right?
I think so, yeah. They're going to concede 120 goals and stay up.
Possibly.
No.
No. But, yeah, so I do look at that and think, you know what, it's not a bad decision. And let's leave it at that. Money dictates that I still can make that move at the moment as it stands. Like, look at it the other way. Wilson scores a hat-trick this weekend. He's going up in value. He's going to get interest.
Yeah, and these two players are possibly going to continue to have a knock-on effect of each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely viable to have both, by the way.
Yeah.
Definitely, and it's okay. I think to bring Jimenez and Pukki into the conversation, it's definitely okay to have 3 of those 4 as your front line. I'm beginning to lean into that way of thinking.
Pukki's really losing a lot of love at the moment.
Yeah, and that's understandable because he's blanked in games that you didn't expect him to blank.
Blanked into the national break again.
His ownership is going to kill if he scores and you don't own. It's just not the big priority for me. I think if I was going to buy Pukki or Jimenez now, I would definitely go Jimenez. Definitely. But it doesn't mean to force the movement, I think. It's not a priority for me to go to Pukki to Jimenez. I think Jimenez... under 10% ownership, timing feels absolutely right for him at the moment in front of good fixtures, which start with a nice fixture. Southampton are not one of them you'd club in like Wolves themselves or Palace.
No, they're a pressing side, which gives Wolves space in behind, and that's what we want.
They'll like it, yeah.
Yeah, I really do think they will. Let's touch on one brief topic before we wrap up this quick show, because it's getting to that time we're going to start having to make our transfers, and price rises over the next couple of days is going to start coming back into play. What the hell has happened to Kevin De Bruyne's price here? Everyone's talking about why it hasn't dropped. 25% of his owners have sold him.
Yes.
And he's held at 10.
There was no explanation. There was no explanation. If they ever fucking invite this face to FPL show, that's the first question we're asking them.
You know, if you watch the FPL show ever, if they invite you on, they ask you questions. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, but I mean, when
you don't get down to FPL towers. Right, I'm not
going to cut off James Richardson and say, "Oi, mate."
Mate, just while I've got a list here. Firstly,
before the cameras are rolling, I'll be like, "Listen, you guys need to explain this." I'm sure James Richardson can't, for example, or Jules Reach. Bless them. I'm sure they're not informed either.
No,
but something's not right. It's absolutely not right. I think I saw someone say that Vidra had like 87 transfers out or something. His price dropped.
Sure,
Now, obviously,
but we know it says a percentage of, which is cool.
Course.
But 25% of his ownership.
But 87 transfers out against 700,000.
Yeah, it's more if you look at it over 2 game weeks as well. And it's left people in a bit of a... It does leave a little bit of a bitter taste because you know people are going to sell him. So I didn't keep him on the wild card. I don't know if it's sour grapes, but it is. I don't think it is in this situation because it so clearly could have, should have gone down. And we've had situations like this before where players' prices have held. Do you think the wild card factor's part of it?
I think possibly yes. I mean, actually, if you look at this round of transfers, De Bruyne's transfers out net is only about 60 odd thousand, which is not that much. I think one of the things that's been a little bit overlooked is he obviously had 700,000 less owners between 7 and 8, but his price went up right at the start of that as well. It still doesn't explain why the price didn't drop, but also since now we're running to game week 9, 60,000 transfers out net is not that much. It's actually more in comparison than Salah, for example. So Salah is not had an excess of 35,000 transfers this week in, but out he's had a ton, mate. 278,000. In terms of the net transfers,
so that's 4 times as many net.
You could make a case that in this week, why has Salah's price not gone yet more than De Bruyne's? Both have obviously taken a big hit in terms of their ownership. Salah down to 36.6% at the time recording. De Bruyne's 31.2. That's held. When we last spoke about that last
31.
week, it was 31.2. I'm sure it was.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of dead teams that are going to have him and things like that. So leave it.
But there's still no great explanation for why Kevin De Bruyne's
sour
price
grapes
didn't go.
because I don't really understand it. But at the same time, I think what should they do? Tell everybody how the algorithm works? Maybe that's not necessarily the best just solution to it.
Well, I think it is and it isn't, because for a lot of people who play the game, they've simplified a lot this year with the pricing. Like there's unbelievable value all over this game. Mm-hmm. But yet we can't explain simply how transfers work. The so-called experts can't. We can't.
Yeah.
The people who don't play regularly log in and say, oh, this guy's dropped 0.2.
The algorithms
and
can't
don't
either. The ones on all of the platforms, the algorithms are never 100% correct, but quite often they're not even 80 or 90% correct.
There's ways that they could do it where it would still have to be a skill. I don't know if it was, say, 5% of your ownership goes up, you go up 0.1, or you lose 10%, you go down 0.1. There's ways that they could explain it so people, and you'd still have to use your fucking noggin to be able to work it out.
Yeah, I mean, most people would be spoon-fed that information through all of the algos that are out there. So they would always simplify it. I think, I'm not sure where I sit on it. There were a few other threads that I saw on Twitter about different ways they could change it, i.e. only do price rises on the Friday to Saturday, for example, rather than them being spread out throughout the week as a potential solution or something along those lines. Don't know, really. But it has caused a problem for a number of people.
Yes, there's certainly sympathy for those who sold at 10 million, expecting to possibly get Amara's return and then obviously buy back at like 9.8. I get that completely. It didn't help as well that the guys in and around De Bruyne's value, Mahrez, Son, blanked.
True.
That would have had a greater effect over this last sort of 8
Mahrez
9
has
days
had a
as
rise
well.
since I've owned him, but not 0.2, so I don't even get any additional value out of it. You know what? This weekend coming, originally I had Son and I had Kevin De Bruyne. And Kevin De Bruyne I moved to Mahrez, thinking that if I wasn't particularly happy owning Son, I'd double up on the City midfield. But I'd have to then sell Otamendi this week because I'd have 4 City players.
If he's past fit, De Bruyne, do you break your team to get him back this weekend?
I'd have to make 2 transfers to get him back.
Would you do it? He's contemplating.
Very 50-50. Very 50-50. It'd be Otamendi to Tierney or Yarmolenko to McGinn. Yarmolenko to McGinn was another 50-50 in my wildcard. So I'd be able to realise the 0.1 million I need if I went Yarmolenko to McGinn. I mean, McGinn banging that hat-trick for Scotland.
Now, what would he do?
Really puts him back up in the record. But look, all it shows is that the stats that we've had up until now about him taking a lot of shots are justified in that he takes a lot of shots. And against someone like San Marino, yeah, they're all going to go in.
I would argue that, like, playing against San Marino, I think even the Indian Kevin De Bruyne, Sujat Shah himself, could return against San Marino.
Oh, mate, I've got a lot of AKAs at the moment. The Brown, David Attenborough, the Indian Kevin De Bruyne. I've got a few coming out. Any other suggestions of who and what I might be? Keep them to yourselves. Nah, don't mind. There we go. It's an interesting one.
To close,
it's a wrap.
In a word, Abraham or Wilson. 3, 2, 1. Abraham.
You're buying now, right? So Abraham.
We agree.
You own Wilson. Just hold for the next 3 or 4 at least. But if you're buying now, Tammy's the one. Thank you for listening to the People's Poll. We have a full week of content coming at you this week. We have the People's Poll now that you're listening to. We are live streaming during the Bulgaria-England game today. That will be out as a video on YouTube afterwards as well. The Clash of the Correspondents this week. We have Ted at Rotation FPL on Twitter talking about Chelsea, and Sai at FPL Fitballer talking about Newcastle. Interesting, really interesting to have both of those guys on because they're very into their football and stats and knowledgeable guys, to be honest with you. Both the 30 and 30s that we did with them were really, really good. We also have our Sky program, Sky FF, and the Final Plan. No Tottenham this week.
Yeah, a few have mentioned that.
Yeah, no Tottenham this week. But tomorrow morning, being Tuesday, who got the planet, as it's been called by so many, or
who gave the planet the assist?
Who gave the planet the assist? Podcast will be available. I think, depending on how it gets edited, and I'll say I think because Manchild's still working his magic, and that boy is going. If you tweet him at Arjun M Shah and just say, "Keep going, son," he'll be working doubly hard. There'll be 2 versions available. One on our channel.
Yes.
Full fat, all singing, all dancing. One on the Who Got the Assist, which you can play in the car when you've got the kids and with the wife around, because hopefully Tom will get the chance to beep.
Yeah, a little bit of a spoiler here for you. Beep. So I ask Tom and Nick at the start, what's okay with swearing? And they go, no, nothing. I'm like, shit's okay, right? So Tom goes, no. 10 seconds in, Suj goes, oh, shit. And then I didn't swear during the whole pod. In the last 10, 15 minutes, Tom just kept dropping F-bombs. I was like, what's going on?
You know, someone has to do the FPL Opta style. Just get a tally chart, if you will, when you listen, and just tally how many times each of us swears, because I'll be fascinated. Nick, I reckon's on 0. Straight up.
Tom was swearing the most. There's no doubt about it.
I only dropped a few swear words. But there you go. There'll be 2 versions, the full fat and the PG version, hopefully in time.
Should we sell ours as the X-rated version?
X-rated, exactly. There you go. But it was great recording with them, and it was a really good listen. Took a little bit of time to warm up, finding our feet with 4 of us, but it worked really well in the end. So do stay tuned for that as well. Plenty of content coming at you. Do hit subscribe and get the notification bell rolling wherever you are. If you're going to join in on this conversation, just jump in on the comments on Twitter or YouTube with who you think is the better pick out of Abraham and Wilson. Other than that, we love you all. Ciao for now.
See you tonight. Get on the YouTube channel, 7:45, Q Music Manchild.
Messi, ancora Messi, ancora Messi, ancora Messi, ancora Messi, ancora Messi, ancora Messi.